for us today. So Solomon has a dream, and the Lord comes to Solomon and says, ask anything you want, you can have. Anything you want, I'll grant. I don't know how Solomon actually ended up asking for what he did, because that would be a great temptation, don't you think? What if God said to you, as soon as you left here, you encounter God there on the porch, and God says, hey, I'll tell you what, I'll give you anything you want. You name it, you can have it. I have to say, even as a pastor, I might think to myself, that 2002 Impala is not running very well right now. Maybe it'd be good to pay off my house. Maybe it'd be good to have some wealth and riches that might last my entire lifetime and I could, pass down to my children. Be tempting, wouldn't it? But Solomon simply says, Lord, give me a wise and understanding heart to fulfill the calling that you've placed on my life. I'm the king of a great nation. I can't do this. Lord, give me wisdom. And did you hear it? It said God was pleased with Solomon's request. In other words, Solomon's request made God's day. It made God's day. You can hear it coming out in the Scripture. It pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked for this rather than asking for riches or asking for victory over the enemies. It really pleased God. So the question comes to us from this particular dream: how can we please God? How can we make God's day, if you will, and begin to live a life that is pleasing in His sight? Well, two things this morning that come forth from this particular passage of Scripture. First of all, we make God's day when we place the needs of others over our own needs. When we place the needs of others over our own needs. Now, that you say that in church, and everybody's like, well, of course, that's the way it's supposed to be. We're always taught that. That's nothing new, preacher. Surely you could come up with something a little more exciting this morning, a little bit different. And the question is, if we know that, why is it not often practiced in the culture in which we live, where the needs of others are placed over my own needs? Notice, not equal to my own needs, but their needs are placed over mine. See, that's really what Solomon did in making this wise request. He was thinking of the people. He was thinking of this great nation rather than thinking of himself. Solomon realized something that we need to realize in our own walk of discipleship, and certainly needs to be recognized in our 21st century. Solomon realized it wasn't about him. It was about these people that God had given him. He, in making that request for a wise and understanding heart, was placing the needs of others over his own needs. And friends, that is spiritual wisdom. That is the wisdom that leads to a life that's pleasing to God. Some years ago, I clipped a piece from the newspaper. It told of a mother whose son, 15-year-old son Doug, started getting a fever, and then the fever became more, and finally she went and he had to have tests, and they did a battery of tests and blood tests and other things, and her 15-year-old son Douglas was diagnosed with leukemia. It was a dark, dark time for that family. He went into the hospital. She stayed with him in the hospital for 10 days, and then he was facing chemotherapies and all sorts of different treatments. And she said she could see her son becoming more and more in despair, becoming more and more discouraged. This dark cloud was looming, and it was becoming darker by the day. She hated to see her son go downhill physically, and especially hated to see him go down spiritually and emotionally. Doug made the comment to them one day in the hospital, "I thought when you were in the hospital you're supposed to get some flowers. I don't see any flowers in my room." Well, Doug's aunt heard him say that, so she called the local flower shop. Young girl, high-pitched voice, answered the phone, Said, I want to send some flowers to such and such hospital room. And then she was afraid because the girl sounded kind of young and inexperienced. She was afraid she wouldn't appreciate how important it was. So she said, my nephew has leukemia, and I need something to brighten his room. So the young girl said, well, I'll include plenty of fresh flowers to brighten up the room. And so the flowers arrived, and there was the card from the family, wishing Doug many prayers and love. But then there was another card in with the flowers. They didn't know what it was. Doug took the card and he opened it up, and this is what the card said. Douglas, I'm the one who took the order for these flowers. I work at the flower shop. I want you to know that I had leukemia when I was 7 years old. I'm 22 years old now. My prayers are with you. My heart goes out to you. Sincerely, Laura Bradley. The mother says that instantly a new spark of light and hope was evident on Doug's face. Imagine that. All of these hundreds of thousands of dollars of medical equipment and treatments and everything that was surrounding him in that medical institution, but the one thing that brought him hope was that someone took the time to go out of their way to simply scribble a few lines and say, I want you to know you can make it through this. There's hope. There's light. This young lady, whoever she was, didn't have to do that. She could have went about her normal routine of tending the flower shop and taking orders and having them delivered. But she was struck at that moment that there was a greater need. And she responded to that and ended up bringing hope to this young man. Friends, the fact is we have that decision to make every week of our lives. You understand that? Do you just go on with your daily routine, concerned about your own agenda, getting it done for you and yours? Or will we open our eyes and see the tremendous needs, both spiritual and physical, that are around us? And like Solomon, ask God, Lord, show me the way to put the needs of others over my own needs. Friends, that is spiritual wisdom. It has to do with your faithfulness as a disciple of Jesus and has to do with our faithfulness as the church of Jesus Christ. Are we making that kind of wise choice? Are we making God's day? Maybe you saw it just a little earlier this month. It was at a Boston Red Sox baseball game, actually. It made its way on all over social media and over the news as well. Did you see it? You know, one thing when you go to a baseball game that you always hope for is be able to get a foul ball. I mean, it doesn't matter to me whether you're old or whether you're young. You would love to get a foul ball when you go watch somebody. Trust me, I've pushed my share of people out of the way to try to get those foul balls. Maybe you saw it. A young boy gets a foul ball. Actually, in this case, the ball girl had picked it up, and she just tossed it to him sitting near the front. Did you get to see that? His name was Ryan. And Ryan took it, and as soon as he got it in his hand, he just turned around, and there was a little girl right behind him, and he just handed her the baseball. And her face lit up, people around, my goodness. They were so struck by it that they sent their roving reporter down to talk to him. Why'd you do that? Man, we really like that. The announcer said, that's the greatest thing I've seen for a long time. And that's true. The young man was raised right, I'll say that. And it's great to celebrate. But you know what struck me? What struck me is why everyone found that so unusual. They see someone preferring someone else. They see someone putting their needs above someone else's needs. And in the culture in which we live, everybody says, wow, that never happens. Whoa, it's a commentary, yes? Because it seems so abnormal to everyone that watched it. Now again, I'm not downplaying the young man was wonderful in doing that, but our reaction also tells us something about our culture, doesn't it? Are we willing to put the needs of others over our own needs? When we allow the grace of God to work and move in our life in a way that we can do that, then we are moving toward spiritual wisdom, a wisdom that comes from God. and we make God's day when that begins to happen in our lives. Secondly, we make God's day when we choose His wealth over the wealth of the world. That's the other thing. Solomon chose the way of God. He chose to live into the calling to be the king that God had placed upon him. In essence, he was choosing the riches of heaven over the riches of this world. He was preferring the wealth of things eternal to the wealth of things that are temporary. That, my friends, is spiritual wisdom. So I guess the way perhaps to pose it today in question form, is your faith in Jesus Christ truly the most valuable possession that you have in your life? Now you will say it a little bit different. Is your faith in Jesus Christ really the most important thing in your life? Are we asking God to show us the way to be rich in the spiritual sense? Or are we really giving lip service to spiritual riches while secretly hoping for worldly riches? If we live a life that's pleasing to God, if a church is pleasing to God, we know that a wealthy church is a church that's wealthy toward God. We know that true riches are found only from the Lord, because everything in this world, brothers and sisters, is temporary. It fades. And some of you have lived long enough to know that it fades fast. So we need to make the most of being wealthy toward God in our wisdom with Him. Wonderful story, rabbinic story. A rich man was taking a journey, and he decided that he would stop in and visit the great teacher. He went to the teacher. This man was noted for his wisdom throughout the region. And he was struck by the fact that the great teacher simply lived in a very modest hut. And he walked in and he had a couple of wooden chairs and an old wooden table and a few books in the main room. And so he asked the teacher, "Teacher, where's all your furniture?" And the teacher said to him, "Well, I might ask you the same thing. Where's your furniture?" And the rich man said, "Oh, no, you don't understand. I'm just a pilgrim. I'm just visiting. I'm just passing through." And the teacher looked at him and said, "So am I. So am I." You see, we're all just on a journey. We're just passing through. The things that we often accumulate and, dare I say, trust in will fade. But the wealth that comes from God, from a faith connection with the Lord, a spiritual connection with the Word and wisdom revealed in Jesus Christ, now that lasts for all eternity. All eternity. So I ask you, brothers and sisters, gathered here this morning at Bridgeport United Methodist Church, I ask you today, is the life that you're living reflecting what's important to your Heavenly Father? Not what's important necessarily to you or someone you know or the expectations of others. Is the life that you're leading reflecting what our Heavenly Father feels is important? Many of you know, past several weeks, I've had several funerals. And you know, anytime as a pastor you do funerals, you also relate that to your own experience of loss and grief. It's really unavoidable and inevitable. And I tell people who are going through that experience, and the flowers, for example, on the altar from Barbara Dye's memorial service, which we had here yesterday, I always tell them, you know, sometimes it will be years later that a memory comes back. A memory, an experience that you had with someone. And that can just be such a joy to recall those great memories. Well, that happened to me this week because of all the funerals that we've had, and also in preparing this message. My father, who died almost 13 years ago, I remembered something. Now, in telling this, I want you to know more than once, in fact, I could say multiple times, I'm sure I disappointed my father in many ways. I remember I was raised in Mount Nebo, a little rural elementary school in Nicholas County. And it was this typical school building with lots of windows in it. And we had lots of recess time back at that time. Now, some of us really like to play football during recess, but we were told, make sure you're plenty distance away from the building because we don't want an errant football, or baseball for that matter, coming through the window. Well, we were coming in from recess, I still remember it, and I thought I had time for one more punt. One more punt. My buddy was nearing the school building. I yelled out to him, catch this one. And man, I let loose with the best punch you've ever seen. It even spiraled a little bit on its way up, and it went right through the window of the school. Crash went the glass into the room. I'm telling you what, my friends ran faster than you've ever seen them run. Everybody scattered, and there I was. I wanted to run, trust me. But I walked toward the school building. I went into the principal's office. I said, Mr. Tyree, I kicked the football through a window. He said, he's playing football too close to the building. Yes, sir. I'll work. I'll replace it. I'll do whatever you want me to do. He said, okay, thanks for telling me, going back to class. So I went to class. And I went home that evening, and my dad was there. My dad said, principal called me today. Oh, is that right? He told me everything that happened. I put my head down. And he said to me, I'm proud of you. I said, what? He said, and he used the words, really where the sermon title came from. He said, you made my day. Made your day? Yeah, he said. Principal said everyone else ran, and you came in and owned up to it. And that's what I like. Now, don't make any mistake about it. I worked and helped pay to replace the window. That's part of it, for sure. But at the same time, I realized in that moment that just for once in my life, at least, I had done something that reflected what my father thought was important. You see that? He thought this was important. So I ask you, when it comes to living your life, are you living a life in a way toward the things that God thinks are important? That, my friends, is spiritual wisdom. That's what makes the difference. And that's how we can move toward living a life that's pleasing in God's sight. I'll finish with this story. Some years ago, I was at a large youth conference. Hundreds of young people who were there. And a young lady stood up to speak. She was a college athlete, very fine college athlete in her college and in the athletic conference that she was a part of. She gave a wonderful testimony concerning her faith in Jesus Christ. It made a huge impression on me as well as the youth who had gathered there. But what I remember most is the introduction that she was given. The leader said, just this week, she found out that she is honored as the top female athlete in her conference. The awards ceremony is tonight. But she's here. What? Top female athlete of the conference. She's here. And she stood up in a very humble tone, said, I appreciate that introduction, but don't really pay any attention to that award or whether I should be there, because I would rather be here worshiping with you. To be honest with you, I just remember that her message was good. I don't remember the content, but I remember that part of the message. You see, she made a choice of what really mattered, of what mattered the most. That's why what we do, young people and older people and all in between, in helping our young people grow spiritually and helping one another grow spiritually, that's why it matters. Because someday they're going to have to decide, are the accolades and awards of this world what matter? Or are the things of God what matter? Will we be the ones that have prepared them to make this choice of wisdom? I pray that God gives us that wisdom today. I was there with a friend of mine at this conference, and I said to him, that young lady is wise beyond her years. And he just looked at me and he said, no, she's just wise, period. Period. Let us pray. Lord, we give you thanks that you have revealed yourself to us as wisdom and word in Christ Jesus. Forgive us for those times in which our choices have not been so wise. They've reflected our wants and needs and desires more than yours. Forgive us, make us new, and keep working with us, Lord, to mold us into the people that you would have us be, that we might live lives individually and together that would please you. Have your way in our lives, have your way in our church, have your way in our homes and in our community, that others might be connected to the wisdom that leads to life. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Our hymn of response is number